call this meeting to order. And what I would love to do right out of the gate is entertain a motion for the agenda item and for the meeting to be held electronically, the agenda item simply being a discussion of environmental cleanup process, including past projects and future projects, you know, the motion to include the fact that this is essential business for the county and fits within the rules about meeting electronically. You know, the motion to include.
So moved.
Second.
Great motion by Commissioner Wheeler and second by Commissioner Davenport. And Ms. Stutes, thank you so much for being on the call today. I'm making the assumption that you're helping us with notes and minutes from today's meeting. So thank you for that. Great. So to start us off, I will do briefly frame up the discussion, and who knows if this helps anyone besides me, but this is the slide that I had prepared for our last meeting. Let me just back this one up really quickly. Hold on. Got some crazy stuff going on here. All right, I don't know what's going on. Here we are. This is the one. So this kind of lays out in very rough form this lays out in very rough form the process by which we're engaging the environmental cleanup. We have complaints come in into the county. Mr. France handles those through welfare. He responds to those calls by inspecting the property, engaging the owner. If violation is there, providing notice letters. And many times, as we've discussed, that results in cleanup, the owner cleaning up the property. And if not, we have this kind of sequence of events that occurs after that, where we start to engage our own county attorney. And if there's no improvement, that goes to court for a citation and orders to clean up. The county gets a bid, and then our HEW committee actually authorizes the county to go ahead and spend the money to do the cleanup. Any corrections to that from anyone, or clarifications or questions about the process that we have? So we need to have two discussions today, and the two discussions are at the bottom there, and we'll actually have them in reverse order of how they appear, I think. We'll start with the current HEW process that's been in place has resulted in a backlog of properties that need to be addressed. And we have already taken action on that backlog by approving a budget that would allow us to fund those cleanups, or at least some or all of those cleanups. That's part of our discussion today. So first, I want to talk about cases that have come up in the past under our current HEW process, and look at the backlog of properties that we need to kind of push through. They've already been through court. They've already got court orders to clean up. We already have bids, or we are getting bids. And now, you know, basically HEW needs to decide whether it's going to authorize the cleanups. And once we kind of take care of all of those matters, we can kind of have a clean slate for moving forward. And what would our process look like? And do we continue to work at the back end of things where it's all kind of sort of done and bid versus do we work a bit more on the front end? Any questions about anything I've said so far? Okay. So I had a really nice meeting with the mayor and Mitch Meredith, our Allison Wilkinson, and Mr. France last Friday. And what I asked them to do for me is kind of sort of sort out the properties in the backlog and where they stand to this point. And actually, Ms. Wilkinson prepared a very nice memo that we just got today, and I think you all may have seen it in your email. It's really a nice, even more rich description of these properties and where they stand. But for a very basic overview of where things are at, you can kind of just look at this. I'm assuming you all can see my screen with a spreadsheet of numbers. Is everybody seeing that? Okay.
Yes.
So you can see that we originally had adopted $15,000 in the budget, but we added 100,000. So we have some of that in reserve and some of that in our cleanup balance. But in any case, this year's budget for cleanups, not for Mr. Francis' salary or any of the other support, just for cleanup costs is $115,000. And then you can see the various projects and their status. Those first two that you see there were resolved in those 3 resolutions. And there's a bit more detail to those than what appears there. But the bottom line is that those 3 resolutions did authorize those cleanups, and those cleanups are completed. So we've spent $11,219.87 on those 3 projects. Below that, you see resolution 2009-15, the Aloisio property. That one has not been started, and our understanding is that the owners are doing some work to address the issues. We may not need to spend the $10,160 that's there, but we have approved that spend. The next case, 2009-14, was a resolution to authorize cleanup for the Broyles property. You all likely remember that we've deferred this one twice. It's one of the biggest spends we've seen in HEW over the years, and part of what, not all, but part of what raised our awareness that we need to look at our process a bit more. This case is going to come back to us in March. So the deferment, it's been deferred until March. And then we will be back in the driver's seat again, thinking about what to do about this property. And I think, you know, for us to do a really good job here, we really need to be looking at where we land with all of the other expenditures and whether we can afford to, or how we can afford to address that property if indeed in March it's continuing to need that cleanup. And then you can see 3 additional properties below that we have not seen in our HEW group yet, but I understand Ms. Wilkinson plans to bring those 3 to us on Thursday. And Ms. Wilkinson, do you want to speak about those 3 for a moment?
I'm happy to. The 3 that, the way Mitch has described them there, is under consideration with cost.
Susie Williams, join the meeting.
Susie.
So those 3 are properties that went to court in November, and we have the court's order to be able to do the work. I think that there were 8 matters that went to court that day. Those 3 we have estimates for. And so I would recommend that you consider making an appropriation for that cleanup up to that amount. The resolution will be worded that it does not include tipping fees. I've looked into that with Teresa Stutz here, how it's been done in the past, because it looks like we've always come in under the estimate. But just to remind you that the numbers you're looking at there are for the third parties to go out there, and then the county's solid waste will send out a dumpster, and that's done by weight. So we would not know that until the end, what the actual cost was. So those 3 total, Mitch has got a total there for you of $7,550 in work. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Those are on the memo that I sent y'all if you want to look at them or anything, but they're all cleanup. issues. They're not particularly heavy cleanup. The one that's on there first, the Hammett Riffle, has a lot of vehicles and large items there, which is why you see the amount being so high.
I think the important note here is that the 75.50 is probably on the low side because the tipping fees will be added in when we get the final analysis. But Ms. Wilkinson, those three will come to us on Thursday for authorization for the spend.
Yes, under the current system that's in place, there are these 15 matters that have been in the workflow, if you will. They're already filed at the courthouse, and we're working through them. So we have the court order to do the work. The estimates have been secured, and I would like to request an appropriation resolution, 3 of them, at your Thursday meeting.
Great.
So why can't we take action on those today?
Well, we could. I think we can.
Yeah, I thought we could too. I don't understand why we don't take action today instead of waiting till Thursday.
Don't we normally get a little more information though, as far as the cost estimate and pictures and things like that of the property?
You do, and also your agenda was styled in a way that you would be considering everything, and then I think it's phrased as consider action from this meeting. That was why I organized it that way.
Okay. I am realizing that I probably could have expanded the meeting to include a more detailed discussion of those properties. Hopefully this context will allow us to move through it super fast on Thursday. Not obligated to move through it super fast, but this is giving us the parameters of where we're at with spend. And so when you look at Ms. Wilkinson's memo, and I'm just gonna stop for a moment here and give me a second, trade out screen.
And while you're doing that, that's right. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about the process. It's not actually to talk about actual property. So
yeah, although I definitely want to make sure that we all feel prepared to address the backlog in an efficient manner and get it out off of our plates. Some of these are matters that have been sitting around for way too long. And just talking with Mr. France the other day really impressed upon me that we've got some stuff going on in the county that we really ought to address, some properties that need to be addressed. So I'm just showing you the memo that came. Sorry, Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, first of all, on that budget document that you had up a minute ago, any documents that are discussed in these electronic meetings are supposed to go out before the meeting to the members. Could we get that sent to us?
Yes.
And then 2, for Thursday's meeting, I just looked at the agenda packet. There are no documents about these properties. So there probably needs to be a supplement to the agenda packet before the meeting. Again, I think we're not meeting and it's not just this committee, but all our committees need to watch that. You're supposed to send those documents out ahead of time to the members.
Yeah, sure. And I would think that would be especially relevant when an action is going to be taken in the form of a resolution or a spend. And so to the extent that some of these were just developed in the last 24 hours, they're really for exhibit purposes. And, we're looking at them today. We'll make sure you actually already have this one that I'm showing now. I was making sure that I was waiting on the budget document to make sure this one and that one were in agreement and there weren't confusing things sent out. So what I'm showing on the screen today, point of information, I'll get it all out to you today, particularly if we plan to take action on Thursday. So this one, Allison put together, and you can see that she puts them into similar categories. So these are the 3 that you saw on the other document, that we have some bids and we're getting close to, you know, preparing a resolution that would authorize the work. We still do have several properties for which we do not have estimates. And so they did not appear on that worksheet that I was showing you in the prior screen. So keep in mind that even just looking at the backlog, Ms. Wilkinson's been saying 15 matters. These are a handful of other matters that are still awaiting estimates and additional information. There are 3 here on the screen that you're looking at, and then there are another 2 matters here. Looks like some of those may actually be resolved on their own. So for example, these 2, it looks like they could be resolved. And even, yeah, I see you've got this as a heading right here. Property owner completed work and matter has been or will be dismissed. So those 2 looks like they're on their way out. These 3 are still concerns that we're waiting estimates for. That one is in your inbox.
May I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
All right. All these junk cars that can never be used again, does the county ever take them to, say, some place like OmniSource and acquire money for them rather than whoever does the cleanup?
I think that we would need probably Mr. France, or maybe Mayor Grandy knows the answer to that question since he's worked closely with them. Mayor, do we ever recycle these cars or other junk metal and recoup any money?
Well, metal, yes. And I don't really know about an entire car. You know, they usually wind up getting the contaminants drained out of them and shuffled over to OmniSource. As best I can tell is what happened with most of our local frames and so forth. So I guess we probably could get something out of automobiles. Good question. I'm not sure about that answer. It's different than just you know, small metal and that sort of thing that we typically collect.
I'm not saying that OmniSource would be the ultimate, you know, way to go, but one of the properties we went by had a number of cars, like 4 or 5, and I thought, you know, I don't know.
It's a great question.
I can tell you that with respect to the liens that have been filed, I've never seen an offset for any recycling or other kind of recovery action. So, and that might just be something that we need to make sure on our estimates that that's clear, that if someone is doing the work that they've, you know, if they've accounted for that and we're getting a better price because they are going to do the recycling and keep that amount.
I'd rather it be that way, that we get a lower price, lower dollars that the county's putting out, and they include that, you know, whatever they can get for the scrap metal, you know, in lowering that price. That, I think that's a better way.
Yeah, I think that's true. But if a car is worth $200 and there are several, you know, if we're watching our pennies, that might be something to consider.
Great.
I wouldn't want the responsibility of lifting the cars off property and carrying it. I think that should be who we contract with.
Mm-hmm. So on the screen right now, you can see if we paid for everything, plus some additional tipping fees that are maybe not on those last 3, we're looking at around a balance of around 50,000. But then remember from Ms. Wilkinson's memo, there's another 3 cases that we don't have bids on yet. So there's additional backlog costs that are still out there. Do you all have any questions about where we stand in terms of our fiscal year budget, outstanding projects, et cetera? And what's your druthers on having these 3 cases come to us on Thursday? I guess Commissioner Wheeler, you had, asked for the materials in advance, and what other comments do folks have about resolving these backlog cases?
I think we ought to move forward with those 3 on Thursday. I just don't want there to be any delays. So I think we ought to have that documentation in front of us so we can move those on to the commission.
Great. And once we take care of those 3, which you see on the screen right now, it's the Hammett, Cannon, and Johnson properties, we will have just 3 more outstanding. But of course, we'll have Broyles come back to us in March, and we may or may not, Aloisio is a maybe or maybe not. There could be some savings there.
In case we don't talk about it on Thursday, could we ask for an update from Mr. France on Broyles at our March meeting, our March committee meeting?
We asked for updates in March.
On Broyles, could we ask for an update from him at our March meeting so we're ready to go at our March committee meeting to send something?
So the HEW meeting in March. I'm glad you reminded me of that, and I am going to put that on my calendar right this minute.
It may help if we've made a recommendation.
Well, the 6 months extension, was that voted on in August or September?
I think it was October.
I don't think, was it actually 6 months? I think it was just deferred indefinitely.
No, it was for 6 months.
I think it was a 6-month deferral. Is that what, does anybody else remember, Ms. Wilkinson? Was it 6-month deferral?
That is my understanding. I pulled the file when I did this memo. I think it was the October meeting that it was a 6-month deferral. And I can double check myself on that, but it was something I looked at when I prepared this.
That would be till the May committee meeting then.
I have April.
Well, the commission meeting would have been at the end of October. So if you could do it in April, that would be just 5. If you're going to do a committee meeting at the beginning of April, you've really only been 5 months since the commission meeting at the end of October.
Fair enough. Sounds like we need to get to the bottom of exactly when that thing's coming back. And just before it comes back, get some updates, get some communication going, and get prepared to come up with a strategy and plan. Because if that one, if we continue to defer that one, then we just continue to have this kind of hole in our process that's unresolved. So, coming up with some kind of creative solution or moving it forward, or I'm not sure.
And that's go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, maybe we ought to get an update in March.
I like that idea.
So we don't come back in May and we're in the same place we've been over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And that's the frustrating thing about these processes. It's really not a process if you don't finish it, right?
Right.
And this is hard stuff to do. I mean, when you're going on someone else's property and these people are struggling, and the sensitivity part of this is where it's not like a regular business. When your business is people. And so I get taking these things into that, and I won't consider the personal side. But at the end of the day, you know, if something's been identified as a hazard to the community, you're not hurting the person that you're cleaning up for. You're hurting the people around that is many more, you know, is the people you're hurting.
Right.
And at some point you've got to get to that. And that's what's difficult about these things. Because again, we can move them and we can pass them, but at the end of the day, it goes to the commission floor and what goes on there. And it's good for the county if people take ownership of their property. It's not like it gets to this point before they actually know I've got a problem. I mean, there's court letters and a lot of documentation that goes out. And right before you come on the property to put a bill in their hand, oh, wait a minute, I'm getting some help. It's tough to say, but sometimes, you know, to get people to recognize that these first notices have some teeth, you have to roll the process at the end of it.
Agree.
And there's nothing this committee can do about that. I mean, really and truly, I mean, it's a commission decision.
Right. Well, I know Commissioner Williams at one point had even suggested that we visit some of the properties that have been on the list for a while or are particular concerns. And that may be one that y'all want to take a drive out and just get a real firsthand sense of, you know, what are we facing here? I will do diligence on making sure that we get clear on when the deferral ends, deferment ends. Is it March? Is it April? Is it May? And then certainly have some information for us well in advance of that time on updates from Mr. France, from property owners, and from anybody else that wants to give us updates so we can make an informed decision. I think it'd be a great goal for this committee to get all these backlog cases taken care of by the end of fiscal year.
Well, it's a great goal. I would say, you know, our goal is to get these out to the full committee.
Right.
I mean, as far as checking them off the list and stuff like that, it's not in our control to do so. I'm not interested in saying that's our goal because that's not in our control.
That's right. That's a fair way to say it. Agree.
Commissioner Jones? I've pulled the resolution 2009-14, which was the Broyles property. And I've reviewed that it says it's deferred from the September 28, 2020 meeting. I think it was on multiple agendas, and it says across the front of it in deferred for 6 months. So I think I counted October, November, December, January, February, March. So that would roll it April for consideration. But if I need to tidy that up to be clear, or I'm happy to, and I'll circulate all of you that resolution if you need it. But also when you said 3 properties, I want to be sure that you're looking at 2 more properties on pages 4 and 5, which would make 5 properties plus the Broyles property and the one that was previously appropriated. So just for big picture, some of them will drop off after this status update because we've been all the way through the process, gotten final orders, and placed liens on the property. So those will no longer be on your updates. But the 3 that you're describing also had, there's others that were in the backlog.
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Please do.
I think as far as the Broyles property goes, that it would be good to have a timeline of when the first complaint came in and how many times it has been brought before this committee or the commission, because it seems like 6 years rings in my mind that there's been a complaint, but I may be wrong. Does anybody know for sure, or can we figure that out? Because if that's a true factor, then they've had plenty of time to implement something.
Yes, I actually just made a note to myself for that meeting that we will work with Mr. France and others to get like a good history of that particular property for everyone in advance of our meeting.
And I can tell you that it was in court in 2016. So the matter was filed, I believe, in 2016.
Thank you.
We asked that Mr. France, particularly if we're not going to take action until April, for the March meeting, if we could get an update that you could then share as part of our report to the commission. So commissioners that have felt like this needed to be deferred need to know, okay, nothing's happened if that's the case. Ahead of time, I'd like them to know in March. Then in April at our committee meeting, if Mr. France could, so we need, rather than having questions that then have to be answered by Mr. France and come back to us, if we could talk with him so that we can make a firm recommendation to the commission and get that timeline rather than that Mr. Williams is talking about. Would that be
That's
okay?
really great. I'm taking notes on all these ideas. I think this is going to be a really good process for the owners, for us, for everybody. So thank you for the input. I feel pretty good about where we stand with backlog in terms of we all have our heads wrapped around it. We know what's coming on Thursday. We can take those three. We can take the additional matters in subsequent months. We have a plan for one of our bigger challenges on the list. If it's okay with you all, I mean, I think we're good to switch over to a discussion about, you know, the future HEW process and how it might reposition itself earlier in the process. And I can let Ms. Wilkinson comment on this, but I'll tell you, sitting down with the mayor, Mr. France, Ms. Wilkinson, Mitch, last week was really educational because there were some and you could even see on the list we were looking at, there were cases that had already gone through General Sessions Court, had already gotten cleanup orders, maybe, you know, that we were starting to look at bids on that ultimately got cleaned up. And, you know, some of that is maybe an artifact of getting Bobby more involved, getting our county attorney more involved. And it does make you wonder, could we have gotten that engagement going a bit more before we went through the whole court process, and what would that look like? I think, you know, Ms. Wilkinson, you've mentioned like a mediation process before jumping into, you know, the citation General Sessions Court piece. Do you want to comment a little bit on that and a little bit on kind of where HEW would fit in?
I'm happy to. Just to take you back, your original question was that HEW was receiving these requests for appropriations and funding and finding out that the matters were on file and there were costs. And so you've been addressing the economic side of that in a number of ways. I recommend that the county consider addressing one of the biggest things that would impact the citizen and the cost, which is that always judges want the parties to mediate before they have a matter in dispute. I mean, that's just standard practice that the judge will say, have y'all talked about this before I make my ruling? And so that happens the morning of the day that the property owners appear in court. And during that process, there are times where they're given additional time. And sometimes these ones that you're looking at, you know, they've had a number of months of extensions, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is happening after the matter is on file and they have court costs. So even these property owners who did manage to get the work done still face $300 to $600 in court costs. And so, you know, what I've tried to tell people that I've talked to is that the county would rather see the citizens use those funds to hire someone themselves or to address it, that this is not something the county is keen to go out and do. So my recommendation is that, and this would be consistent with the resolution, that lawsuits be initiated with the oversight of this committee. And I'm paraphrasing that 1998 resolution. That'll give you some guidance after they've gone to what I'm going to call a pre-litigation mediation. I don't have the authority to cite them to appear in front of me. A court has that. But once they're cited and that service cost is on there, that's when their costs start. So I'm suggesting that you insert an additional level, and this may not have been practical when the county was paying an hourly rate, but I think at this point you have a fixed cost in the county attorney and the paralegal that's a flat rate. And so I think you can provide a service without increased cost to the county, which may help on the cost of cleanup and may help the citizens not face the cost of court. So that would be that my recommendation is that Bobby France would prepare the citation just like he normally would. But he give it to me and I send it just like you would sometimes use before you make a lawsuit. You say, this is a courtesy copy of the citation that's coming. And, we'll set aside the time to meet with them. We could set aside a day, a month, or however the process should be. Teresa and I can work on that depending on the number of properties, and work with Bobby and have them, sit down with us by phone, by Zoom, or in the conference room downstairs, and see if we can engage them on, working through this process. Like Commissioner Davenport says, if we don't have a process that we're working through, it's hard to engage them. So that's my recommendation. And that then I would come to y'all as a committee with the oversight of the litigation that's in that resolution from 1998. And I would say it's my recommendation, having seen this many people, that this number, we should proceed to court. There's not, it's not something that's going to yield fruit without a court order. And so I'm hopeful that would help everyone all the way around. Do you have any questions or any clarification?
I think that's a great idea. I think that it may not be, the chart sort of suggested that we would be moving, but to me, you still have HEW involved on the back end. So if one goes through court, then for the resolution to be drawn up for the county to expend the money, it would still come through HEW. So we'd still be doing exactly what we're doing on that back end and evaluating whether it's worth spending the money to do the cleanup or what we need to do there at that point. But at the same time, we get this front end situation going where we can evaluate a little bit, may pick some up that we wouldn't want to do, wouldn't want to send through General Sessions Court even. But I have a question for you on this, Ms. Wilkins. My understanding is the General Sessions Court, and I may be wrong on this because of the environmental court part of it, but can they actually order the party to clean it up and hold them in contempt if they don't, rather than us do it?
Yes, they can. And that is part of the private act and the special powers that were given with respect to environmental court. I think that they normally don't have that same power, but it was very specific in the private act. And that's where they get the authority to fine. And I think it's up to a certain amount per day. So they do have that authority. But to your point, there might be matters where it's just better served. And this is a footnote for another day. If there's a structure on the property or something that is really outside the litter zone, where, the county may want to make the determination that another court would be a more appropriate jurisdiction. I still think that's something that we should maintain, and I know that Chancellor Rambo agreed to set aside, a standing date or something like that. So I feel like we'll have the cooperation of the Justice Center in making available times on their docket. So, and, but it is a case-by-case evaluation on, is it someone who's flagrantly avoiding the law, or maybe someone who's dangerous, or there's a dangerous condition. We have had a meth cleanup before. We've had a deceased person on the premises before. There may be a lot of different factors that we should keep the jurisdiction open.
And that would be an opportunity to discuss that at that front end stage.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
And it did seem like out of those, say, 10, 15 matters that we were just looking at least 3 of them involve a zoning violation as well. So, there's complicating court-related issues there. So what you know, what exactly tangibly would HEW be doing on the front end? When would we hear about cases? Would it be information only? Are there actions we can take on the front end, or is it more of a oversight? Like what's the role that HEW plays on the front end?
I would direct you to the resolution that you have the authority to enforce said statutes by the instigation of suits, both criminal and civil. And so that is the primary basis that I would recommend this committee look to, which is, you know, and it would depend on the volume, but whether it's monthly or quarterly, I had originally said quarterly, where the county attorney's office would bring you a summary, having done the pre-litigation mediations. And if we had the process where they were rolling through, you would then hear a recommendation that suits be instigated, and whether they're criminal or civil, this court or that court, all of that would be in a recommendation to you at the committee level.
Great. So we would be the ones to authorize going forward with a civil case, which happens sort of automatically now. Okay, that makes sense to me. Other questions from folks?
Yes, I have one. All right, take an estimate to clean up a piece of property. Are the property owners shown or told of this estimate and what's going to happen, that it's going to be put on their record, or there's going to be a lien? Is this communicated to the owner?
Yes, it is. If they appear in, well, two things happen. They are cited to appear in front of the judge and told that there's a problem with the property. This is what the problem is: debris, litter, etc. And they're given the opportunity to clean it up. Most of these got extensions. And if they don't, you know, and then after the court rules, we mail all of those orders. So just starting with the ones that you've seen, these 3 that you've seen cleaned up. After we got the order from the court, we sent a letter that said, we have a court order that will be coming out. We'll be coming out to get the estimates and then be doing the work. So we sent that. And then some of them just don't appear in court. So that's a whole other issue if they don't appear. Then we give everything in correspondence. And then we send them the final order, which has all of the receipts and everything attached. And I tell them that their property rights are affected, that there will be a lien placed on their property, and we record that order against the property. So they are given all of those documents before and after. They may not get the estimates before the final order, but if they were in the process, they would. Some of them just don't appear.
Thank you.
Is there a place for HEW to intervene at that point where not every case is a situation where you have someone who just is contrary and doesn't want to comply? We hear from Bobby a number of instances where folks either can't afford to do it, can't physically do it, or for some other reason. So is there a place of intervention, you know, for this committee that, you know, might engage community support for someone who just isn't able? I mean, take them to court and cite them all day, but if they can't do it, then you know, they're really not accomplishing anything anyway. So in some cases, you know, would there be a way to do it a different way?
If that's a question for me, I think it would be a really great idea for you to consider those issues with the recommendation of proceeding to court, because I think it should be at that time, before there's a lawsuit filed, where they then have court costs and other fines potentially assessed against them. And I can tell you that in all the ones that I've appeared in, and it's not 100, but no one has been discourteous and no one has been obstreperous. I mean, these are people who have been very clear about You know, they're just not able to do it. And some of them didn't think they were able, and then they found family members or community. And that's what I'm talking about, engaging them. If there were resources available, or, you know, one of the commissioners, I think it was Commissioner Carragher, has a relationship to a service organization here in the county, and they were very responsive and went out to see if they could assist, but it really wasn't the type of work that their volunteers do. But, you know, if there was a Rotary Club or a Ruritan or Boy Scouts or a church, or, you know, I don't know. I mean, there would be a delicate issue of getting consent for them to do the work, but, you know, I would expect many of these people would at least entertain that idea. But I would suggest that that's before the lawsuit is filed, because it really is about not burdening people who are already burdened with, you know, something that's overwhelming their abilities.
Do we have somebody who could create a resource list for us of, here are community organizations that, you know, just so that's a handy, like, even talking to these organizations and getting a clear picture of when they would not be willing to help us out with some projects for folks that are really going to be challenged regardless of court to get it done. How can we pull that together? Is that something that's out there somewhere? Need an intern. That'd be a great project for an intern, seriously, to call around to various community agencies and get a little list of contact numbers, names, and also kind of like, here's what they will and won't do. And then we have that thing handy when folks come in and we're struggling to help them out. I think it's a great idea.
But in the meantime,
of it, yeah.
Excuse me. Well, I was going to say, in the meantime, you will see that there are a number of properties where just the engagement and the communication with the county and the plain speak of, this is probably your retirement and your biggest asset, and this is what's going to happen. How can we work with you? Did result in families stepping in, maybe legal aid in Johnson City, I know has done one. You know, so I think on a case-by-case basis, some organizations may present themselves based on the location, because many of them are near churches, you know, that might be interested in assisting someone, you know, clean up the property so that their congregation is not, you know, everybody's connected to it.
Yeah,
that's great.
I don't know exactly where we're going here, and have a list of those people for the homeowner to contact, I think is great. For us to step in and help solve their problem, I don't agree with that. That's just me giving them that and having them look into that. But if they can't find anybody, we're sending someone in to clean up the property because it is a safety concern or whatever for the neighbors in that area. That's just, I don't remove responsibility though.
Agree. So what I'm hearing is that, you know, we definitely want to engage the process on the front end. What I'm hearing is maybe on a quarterly basis, we could have Mr. France, Ms. Wilkinson, the mayor, bring us the spreadsheet that we've seen in the past, which show all the cases that have, you know, been brought to our attention and have been unresolved to this point. We could learn about those specific cases that have not been responsive to the initial letter. We could learn about the cases that are in mediation. We could help make some decisions around civil court or other processes, and that would be the front end role of HEW. Am I hearing that right? And how do we formalize that? Do we just say this is what we're going to do? Or do we have to write it down, or is it a resolution? Like, how does it?
I don't think we limit them to quarterly. This is sort of, in the past, it's always been kind of an ongoing thing. And to say they're going to have to wait 3 months to move forward with something is probably not. Again, I don't know that we're doing this because there's a public reason we need to get that property cleaned up.
Agree. So as needed.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Jones, I would encourage you to think of it that there's the operations side of things where, you know, I'm working with Bobby France on the list, how many letters he sent out, et cetera. And we then have this pre-litigation mediation. And then I can just bring the recommendation. If that doesn't work, so we'll be reducing the number so that you don't have the volume to hear the details on
sure.
and try to get behind, but also that I would not want you to put yourselves in the position of a quasi-tribunal type of committee where you're making decisions which ones to proceed on, et cetera. Because then I can bring you a recommendation that's, you know, looks at whether or not they should go to court. And I think that'll lighten your load and keep Bobby in the field, Bobby France in the field, unless you need to hear those details from him. And that'll keep operations, legal, commission, everything should flow in little pieces that way and make your work lighter with no resolution, because all of this is already in the 1998 resolution and the private act and the procedures that are in place, with one little insertion that we just bring this recommendation to you, which I think is consistent with the way it was written.
Great. Well, that sounds great. And it sounds like Commissioner Wheeler, you want to keep the back end piece in as well. So we'll still hear and authorize those cases for whom cleanup has been court ordered and we have bids.
But it has to be in there because there's no money appropriated until it comes back through. So from a budgetary standpoint, it has to be that way.
Could it just go to budget? Should we keep it coming through you?
Well, if it goes to budget, then budget's having a look at the information about the case. No, I think it should go through first.
So we close the loop on those cases. That makes sense. Yeah. I like it.
Oh, I want to ask another question. In the 6 months deferral on the Broyles property, can we, as a HEW committee, say enough is enough? If it hasn't been addressed, can we insist that we have the right to go in and do something?
Not without the commission appropriating the money.
Yeah, the full commission has to, we can send a resolution to the full commission.
Okay.
But Commissioner Williams, I think that's why I'm asking for the report in March to get ready for going in April. But I want them, you know, the ones, if there are people that are going to say defer it again, I want to be able to say to them, well, you heard a report in March that nothing had been done. What's been done since then?
Agreed.
I'm assuming nothing has been done in March, obviously, but that has been the pattern in the past. So if that repeats itself and nothing's been done, trying to get ready so that, as you say, in April, we can say enough's enough. We need to move this one off of the commission's.
Commissioners usually, excuse me, my timing has been off. Usually when something is deferred in the full commission meeting, it's placed back on the agenda without going back through committee. Unless it's actually sent back to a committee.
But that would not mean that we couldn't take action on it.
No, it does not. But I just wanted you to know that otherwise we have that ready to go at the expiration of the 6 months, which I think is after March. So just for your benefit, if there's additional action you wanted to take or something, I can send you that resolution so you'll have all those details. But you could also it could be placed on the agenda.
I think we want to keep it on our agenda in April to make a recommendation, is my sense, if everybody agrees with that.
On our agenda for April or March?
report in March and take action then in April. So it'll be that way it'll be on the April commission agenda that you're reporting back that we've recommended it.
Yep. I've got it down.
Even in our full commission meeting in February, letting folks know we've talked about this in February. We're going to have a little more update in March, and we're taking action in April. I mean, we just try to remove as many obstacles as we can and over communicate, and we'll see where it is.
Very good idea.
I'm pretty good at over communicating.
I'm not, so that's good. And I don't do a good job. So I'm glad we have those over communicators. That's good.
Well, I tell you, you need to drive by this property.
That was my suggestion. I think that's a good one. And you had made that suggestion last time, so I was building on your idea. I have not yet done that, so.
Yeah, I think definitely the people that have, I have not driven by, but the people that have a question on whether we should take action or not definitely need to drive by.
Yeah. I want to be respectful of time. We just have a minute left. I feel like we made a lot of good progress today. I really appreciate everyone, being willing to be vigilant, willing to do a deep dive on some of these processes. I'll certainly try to provide a good overview of our discussion in the commission meeting at the end of the month so that everybody kind of knows what we all talked about, and I'll over communicate. Wow, there's a word for it now. It's just, I'm gonna get a shirt that says she over communicates, over communicator. But if there's no other discussion, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I also realized I totally forgot to take a roll call vote at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know what can be done about that, but maybe we'll just double vote now. So, okay, I'll just take a roll call vote to adjourn. Davenport?
Yes.
Wheeler?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Jones? Yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great day.